I'm a teen male being raised by my maternal grandparents. After my mom died, Dad decided he needed to get away and left me with them. We had all lived with my grandparents before that, so it wasn't a huge change, but I miss my dad. I was only a kindergartner when it all went down. 3 years later, he came back, was engaged, and wanted me to be a family with him and Sandy. He and my grandparents fought in court over me because my grandparents were my legal guardians. Reunification therapy was ordered for the two of us, and the courts let him see me for 1 weekend a month at the start. The reunification therapy didn't go the way it was meant to. It was meant for me to want to live with him and feel comfortable living with him again. So it was decided my grandparents would keep custody of me, and he would get every other weekend visitation. He was allowed 1 week of vacation every summer until I turned 16, so this will be the first summer it's not a legal obligation. My dad and Sandy have kids together and have tried to get me to want them. Not just Sandy or his other kids, but him. He knows I don't want to be a part of his family. He knows I see going to his house as a chore. And I know he tries, but I'm not interested. I never hid that from him either. But my dad and Sandy took it for granted that I'd be going on vacation with them this year, and it's not happening. Once I told them, it was like this huge deal, and my dad and Sandy freaked because they told their kids I'd be going. And the last weekend I was there, the kids were telling me they wanted us to go on this water slide together. Sandy told me I could go for the sake of the kids, and I asked her why I'd do that. So then she said, "You should be the one to tell them since it'll make them sad." I told her they were the ones who assumed and didn't ask, so I wasn't going to do their parenting for them. Dad asked me to reconsider. He told me he feels like he's losing me, and these next 2 years would be significant for our relationship in the future. I told him he lost me over a decade ago. Sandy and Dad are now both angry at me for not telling the kids myself. They told me I should grow up, take responsibility, and protect my innocent siblings. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. As you stated, it isn't your job to parent the half-sibs. That's their job. It is unfortunate that Dad and Sandy hadn't talked with you about your summer plans, and perhaps you could have told them as well. It is also very true that Dad lost you 11 years ago when he put himself ahead of you and took 3 years and a wife to find himself again. I'm glad you have loving, caring grandparents. My response to Dad? The guy who abandoned his kindergartner thinks he's in any position to tell anyone to grow up? It's not my responsibility to help you mitigate the consequences of your poor parenting choices, past and present. How about, for possibly the first time in your life, you accept responsibility for your actions and be the adult instead of trying to manipulate your child? OP, enjoy your summer. LOL, you just ruined their babysitting plans. You needed your dad when you were 5 and he wasn't there for you. Your dad made his bed and doesn't want to lie in it. Now it's their job to manage and regulate their kids' disappointment, not yours. It also is not your job to manage a dad who screwed off and left you 11 years ago and now can't deal with the fact he damaged the relationship beyond repair. He never protected you and now wants you to protect your half-siblings? Wow. It's hilarious that they told you to grow up and take accountability, the exact thing you're making them do. But they didn't break the news that they committed you to going on a vacation without making sure you were going first. So many terrible parents. My ex-wife and I got divorced 2 years ago. We have a teen son with whom we share custody. He spends 1 week with me and 1 week with my ex. My girlfriend and her daughter moved in with me at the beginning of this year. My son and her have been getting along better than I could have hoped for, but lately he's been acting dismissive towards her and her daughter. Last week, we found out that we'll have a child together. We broke the news to the children today over dinner. Her daughter was excited to have a younger sibling, but my son didn't really seem too happy. After dinner, I asked him if something was bothering him. He asked if we were really going to have a child and how I could be so sure that it was mine. I told him that was no way to talk about someone, and he reacted by doubling down on his statement and calling her a homewrecker and a gold digger. He was getting pretty loud, so I told him to either calm down and talk to me normally or go to his room to cool off. He decided to go back to his mom's house instead. I agreed to drive him, because I didn't want him walking through half the city after dark. I told my girlfriend what happened, and she thinks I should text him before going to bed and let him take his time to respond without being pressured. I did receive a text from my ex, though, in which she called me an idiot, among other things, for kicking my son out in favor of my girlfriend, which is something I never did. I didn't want him to leave, but I also didn't want to force him to stay here when he insisted on leaving. My ex might be behind my son's reaction since he can't stand my girlfriend. None of the accusations seem like something my son would say, especially since my girlfriend contributes to rent and groceries because she's an adult who can pay for herself. Edit. My ex and I agreed to get a divorce because we'd grown apart and just weren't happy anymore. Neither of us cheated, and my son knows that. My girlfriend and I met 4 months after my ex and I separated and started dating 2 months later. She didn't meet my son until we were sure our relationship was serious. You are the idiot. Expecting a child to be on the same page as 2 adults is not realistic. So this info was sprung on him, and he didn't have time to process it. First, your ex isn't the reason for this reaction. He's entitled to his feelings. As the parent, you need to work through this with him. This is a lot for a teenager to handle. He's clearly going through a lot. Divorce affects children differently. Having been one of those teenagers myself, he needs counseling. He might be feeling as if you replaced his family with a new one. I don't know the circumstances surrounding the divorce. However, blaming your ex for his negative feelings and what he's going through doesn't solve anything. Also, comparing his reaction to your girlfriend's daughter isn't fair. That's great that she's happy. Perhaps her mom gave her a heads up. Perhaps her parents' divorce, if there was one, didn't affect her the same way. Bottom line, your son needs help processing his parents getting a divorce, dad getting a new girlfriend, dad moving in his new girlfriend and her daughter, and dad and new girlfriend getting pregnant. That's a lot. Yeah, dude, you got divorced when he was a young teen and almost immediately got a new family, but now you're having a new kid. Think about how your current child might take that. Did you consider that perhaps he's a teenager and he might feel replaced? You just moved them in and told your son to adjust to it with no support, help, or discussion of how to adapt to these changes. The new baby is just proof to him that you're moving on without him. Part of me feels bad, but part of me doesn't. So I don't know if I'm here for validation or to be told I'm bat crap crazy. I gave birth several months ago, and I definitely was slapped with PPD, PPA. I'm getting better now through medical interventions. Some background. My husband and I moved right beside his best friend, Chris, and Chris's girlfriend, Claire, back in October, and they also just had a baby a few months ago. We share a yard. I'm getting incredibly freaked out by my husband's relationship with Claire. He's only known her as long as I've known her, and in my opinion, they're both disrespectful of Chris and me. I understand and have zero issue with my husband having female friends. He has plenty, and they're all lovely and respectful. However, there's been a lot of things I'm simply not okay with. For example, Claire won't come outside if I'm outside, but she runs right over if my husband is outside. She's constantly touching his arms and laughing while leaning in close. She calls him names and tells him he's stupid while giggling. If I come out during those moments, she acts buddy-buddy with me, but it's all an act in my opinion. We've also had barbecues and fires with Chris and Claire. Darn near always, Claire will ask my husband for favors, but never ask her boyfriend, like clipping the straps of her baby carrier, or grabbing things for her, or asking him to hold her and Chris's baby so she can go inside to pee, even if her boyfriend is right there, to a point where Chris is like, I'm literally right here, and my husband will pass him the baby and be like, yeah, that was weird. It nearly always turns into her hanging out with my husband all night. Even when my husband isn't engaging with her, she will stand beside him. Last weekend, my husband and I were having a fire together and just reconnecting as a couple. I had walked inside briefly, and when I came out, Claire was sitting in my chair beside my husband, trying to joke around with him and play with my baby, who my husband was holding. She didn't even get out of my chair when she saw me come out either. She just parked her butt there and basically ignored me and kept trying to talk to my husband. So my husband looked at me and said, "Babe, here, take my seat." and got up and moved. And Claire went, "Oh, sorry," and got up and walked off. I asked my husband what that was about, and he's like, "I have no idea. I literally told her you and I were trying to get alone time, and she just sat down anyways." So it's not my husband, it's her. Not even 10 minutes later, she and Chris come out, and Chris says, "Claire said you guys were partying without me," which ultimately soured the mood. Since we've been here, we can't have alone time because Claire and Chris are always right here. I don't mind Chris. Anyway, after that night, I told my husband that I was at a point of being completely uncomfortable with him interacting with Claire at all. I made sure to tell him that it's not him that concerns me, but it's her lack of respect for boundaries and her obvious interest in him. He asked me what I expected him to do, and I told him I expected him to avoid interacting with her when he could, because dropping hints like he has been doesn't work, and I don't want to cause a massive scene by straight up telling her to back off. My husband has since avoided Claire at all cost, but Chris mentioned my husband acting weird, and my husband straight up told him that it's because Claire's making me uncomfortable. He agrees with me because Claire makes him uncomfortable as well. Now Chris and Claire have been avoiding us and giving me death glares. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Start calling out those behaviors. Gee, Claire, can't keep your mitts off my husband? How weird. Claire, it's gross how you keep touching my husband. Why do you keep acting so gross? Claire, I know you want to be me, but you're acting a bit extra right now. That's weird. Just keep on telling her she's weird and gross, because she is. Claire, my husband has his own baby to take care of. He shouldn't be held responsible for yours too. I cannot stand women like that. She's probably over at her house crying at Chris about how yet another woman doesn't like her, and she doesn't understand why. The bottom line is, her behavior is questionable at best. Chris has seen it on display for himself when she'd ask your husband to help him with crap instead of him. And both of them are blaming the wrong person for the fact that the friendship has taken a bit of a hit. You said that your husband was also uncomfortable with her behavior, for heaven's sake. If that woman ever does this crap to you again, you need to let her know straight up that you see through her tricks by saying things like, "Why are you asking my husband to do that when your own fella's sitting right there?" Or even, "It's so weird how you come running outside anytime my husband is out there. So weird." P.S. Next time they give you the death glares, give them right back. Last night, my boyfriend, 24, and I, 24 female, tried to talk about our future together. We've been together for 3 years and want to come up with a budgeting plan to buy a house. While talking, I asked if he had considered getting a job. Currently, he works at DoorDash and just finished a year of grad school. He's an aspiring jazz musician. Where we live, there aren't many gigs, so he hasn't been paid for performing all school year. He immediately shut down because he was caught off guard. In his mind, he had planned to work at DoorDash all summer to earn money. He told me he couldn't stand the idea of working for someone else and that getting a real job just wasn't who he was. Context: I've worked since I was 16. I worked the entire time while he was in school, splitting our expenses 70-30. I've begged him to work in the past to take some of the load off, but instead, he's been using student loans to cover rent for the semester. Honestly, if he genuinely followed through, I wouldn't even be mad that he was working at DoorDash. He makes decent money when he does it, but the thing is, every time he promises me that it'll work, he ends up not following through. I felt upset that he was bashing real job culture when I've had to work so much in my life to keep us where we are. We got into an argument, and ultimately, I said that if he refused to acknowledge his toxic view of work culture, I couldn't be with him. He couldn't believe I said that so easily after 3 years together, so we drove off for a few hours. We're now at this point where neither one of us is willing to budge. I will admit that I have an anxious attachment style. I push too hard in arguments and don't give things time to settle. Sometimes I need to be told that I'm right because I seek validation in arguments, and it makes people upset with me, which is valid. I pushed last night and want to hear that I'm right. I can't tell if I was right or wrong for pushing this particular issue. Am I the idiot for telling my boyfriend off for his view on work culture? Not the idiot. Your boyfriend doesn't have a problem with work culture. He's just lazy. I know he doesn't have a problem with it because he's perfectly fine mooching off of you, who's only able to support the two of you because you've embraced work culture. That's a crystal ball to your future. Don't be someone else's doormat. Time to cut him loose. Yep, it's easy to live the free lifestyle of an artist when someone else is grinding a 9-to-5 to foot the bill. Lord save me from hippies who shout about the man and how everybody's a corporate drone, or whatever they're yelling about these days, while using the wages somebody made from being one of these corporate drones to fund their life while they're not actually creating anything, or helping anybody, or doing anything to add something to the world. He's not getting a real job because of any moral obligations. If he were, he'd be trying to earn money so that OP doesn't have to work in a job that goes against his morals. He's using her to promote his ridiculous lifestyle. It's a slap in the face to artists who've worked really hard at not fulfilling jobs so they could get to a stage where they could live and make their art. Girl, cut ties and get into the lifeboat because this boy's ship is sinking and he'll take you and your financial stability into the murky waters with him. I, female 28, have been in a relationship with my fiancé, Tyler, male 42, for the last 4 years. He has 2 kids from a previous marriage. The kids are a pre-tween boy and a tween girl. His wife passed away when his youngest was a toddler. He met me 3 years later. His kids are wonderful and we get along well. We live together. I do everything for them since Tyler works long hours. They call me mom, but they are aware of who their real mom is. We have her pictures in their rooms, and Tyler always talks about her to them. We're planning our wedding. My father offered us his condo in Hawaii so we could enjoy our honeymoon there. It was a very kind and generous offer. When I told Tyler, he was so grateful. Then he said, I bet the kids will have a blast. I looked at him in disbelief and said, Kids? He said, yes. I said, that's our honeymoon. I don't want to be a mom on my honeymoon. We can go on plenty of family trips later, but this is our honeymoon. He said, I was honest with you from day one. I told you I'm a package deal. You can't just choose me, not my kids. I told him I understood, but could they stay with my mom for 1 week, just for our honeymoon? He got very frustrated and said he couldn't believe how insensitive and selfish I was being. Am I the idiot to expect to have a child-free honeymoon? He made me feel like I was an evil stepmother who was excluding his kids. Not the idiot. Is that even a question? It's a honeymoon, not Thanksgiving. Run. It is one thing to neglect your kids and another to not realize that every environment is not appropriate for children to be involved. You will have further issues down the road regarding this, especially if you ever decide to have children with this man. He won't even hear you out, and you should be cautious about being with someone who could automatically cast you as an evil step-parent because you have boundaries. It seems this idiot found a much younger woman to manipulate into being a nanny spouse. I really hope this is an eye-opener for OP. I can only imagine how painful this breakup will be, as she obviously loves both him and his kids, but this is nowhere near an equally giving partnership. Honey, I was in a situation like this. After 10 years, he never wanted more kids, and the stepkids turned out to be evil and wanted nothing to do with either of us. We broke up, and now I'm too old to have kids of my own. You should prioritize your needs more often and see how he reacts.